Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. That's right. We call it the Tim May Show now, Marlon Kerner, not the Tim May Podcast. And I just said hello to my special co-pilot for this week. He's been on before. He's going to be on more, but he's on today for sure. I should have said. Marlon Kerner, welcome back to the Tim May Podcast. Or excuse me, the Tim May Show.
Yes, the Tim May Show. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, you know I've got you on, man. You played cornerback at The Ohio State University, 1991 through 1994. You played cornerback in the National Football League, the Shield. You played all kinds of things in the National Football League, and now you're basically living. I wouldn't call it retirement because you're not retired from working. You're just retired from the National Football League. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this man still lives in the greater Buffalo area. Do I have that correct? And you may not be able to hear me through the snowbanks. Can you hear me through the snowbanks?
You know, surprisingly enough, there's no snowbanks. I can actually see grass, but we've had over 100 inches of snow this year, and I've had my fill, so I'm ready for spring to come on this way.
I'm thinking about giving you, when you come on my show from now on, I'm thinking about calling you Marlon Snowplow Kerner. Because
I'm pretty good at that too, by the way.
I bet you are.
Driveways and sidewalks.
Either the plowing get going or the going get plowing, but that didn't make any sense. But the bottom line is you got to. I remember when I moved up here from Texas, man, we had that first big snow in 1976-77 winter, one of the coldest winters on record, and I thought that's just the way it's supposed to be. And I remembered digging through clearing a sidewalk one day. And then the next day having to go out and do exactly the same thing. And I went, this is like moving sand, man. This is like moving a pile of sand. This is not very much fun. So I quickly, when I could afford it, jumped on the old snow blower routine. I'm sure you got a big one, right, Marlon?
I've got one that's about 24-inch clearance. Yep. You got to have one of those. And we call them snow throwers.
Yes.
They shoot them. Mine shoots about 35 feet
to
my neighbor's yard. I can shoot it across to my neighbor's yard. So I'm good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Marlon Snow Thrower Kerner. Hey, Marlon, you know why I've got you on, man. Ohio State has started, as we record this, Ohio State is going into spring practices 2023. They're going to practice twice the first week, take a week off, take a break during spring break, come back and finish it off and headed toward the spring game on April the 15th in Ohio Stadium. But you know why I've got you on, man. You texted me right after the Georgia game. Wow, what a thrilling game to watch. But man, what a stab to the heart the fourth quarter was. Man, when the defense had its shot to really show it could stop a passing game, stop big-time passing game when it needed to, didn't get the job done. Ohio State gets outscored 18-3 in that fourth quarter after taking a big lead. Of course, we know everything that happened to the offense that night, not the least of which was losing Marvin Harrison Jr. on that cheap shot at the end of the third quarter. But how much did it just hurt you to watch that fourth quarter? And that's what I'm leading to here is the spring. They've got to get some things figured out, right?
Right. They definitely have to fix some things. I think you and I talked about after a lot of games last year, just kind of, oh, wow, like it's interesting. And when you step back and you look at the stats, it wasn't all bad. Like, I'll say that as a fan, as a former player, you step back and you look at things and you look at the rankings. And I think they ended up finishing 6th in the Big Ten in total defense, 14th nationally in total defense. But I think the thing that really stuck out the most is big plays. I think they gave up a lot of big plays. I want to say they had, which is crazy to think of a stat of an Ohio State defense, 18 plays of 40 yards. They had because I had to write it down because I couldn't believe it. They had 11 plays of 50 yards or more. Then they had 6 plays of 60 plus yards and 5 plays of 70 plus yards. And so when you start thinking about that, doesn't matter how solid you play, because at some point in time, you know that you're going to get, if you give it one of those big plays, it's an equalizer. And that's really what happened watching that Georgia game. You're watching like, okay, which defense shows up? They played well. They had done a pretty okay job of not giving up too many big plays. Going into that fourth quarter, you're like, okay, we're up by 14. And then all of a sudden you're like, you can't put a safety on the fastest man on the field with no help over the top and say, hey, you got him man to man. And I think those are things, when you look at things like that, somebody should have said, this is a bad matchup. Call timeout now. Like, we need to get a timeout. We need to line up right. I don't know if they called it to the strength to the wrong side. Like, there's so many things that could have gone wrong on that, but you have to recognize, okay, where's the mismatch? And I think that's what they really have to figure out going into this spring ball, because you've lost some players. You're bringing in new players. So for me, looking at it, it's a time to really help guys understand. I think when you told me I was coming off, I was thinking like, okay, now what would I look at spring, being a former player and having gone through that process? I think one of the things they want to do is really help guys explain the defense, understand the ins and outs, what we're trying to accomplish, but more importantly, how the opposing offense is going to try to attack them. Because once you understand how a team is going to try to attack you, then you can play within the scheme of what you're trying to do on the defense. I think too many times last year they got caught out of position, trying to hide and disguise coverages. At some point when they go 5 wide, you can't disguise everything. You can't show cover 2 and you got to get down and play man-to-man. You got to get down and play man-to-man and say, forget it. If I have to give up body position or give up disguise at the sake of getting in the right position, we give up the disguise. And so you can have those type of conversations with guys like, here's our scheme. Here's what we want done. Here's where we want the ball to go. Here's the hot we want to give them. If we can jump in that lane and make him hold it, the rush is going to get there. And so those are things that I really would want to clean up, because, I mean, 5+ plays over 70 yards, that's unheard of. I mean, when you look at the stats for the last 5 years of Ohio State defense, I think they might have had one in the last 4 years, a 70+ yard play. We have 5 in one season. One season, you gave up 5 70+ yard getting plays. That's unheard of when you talk about playing good defense.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, like you said, I mean, you touched on it. Ohio State's got 2 starters. I would call them regular starters back, and not even regular. But the point is, you've got Denzel Burke back at a cornerback. Right. And then you got Jordan Hancock ready to step up in that realm. You've got a transfer from Ole Miss, Davison Igbinosun, who just came in and is going to be part of spring. So in the quarterback room, along with several other guys, and then in the safety spots, they've lost Ronnie Hickman and Tanner McAllister. You got Lathan Ransom back. You've got some other guys. I mean, Jihad Carter, the transfer from Syracuse, who started for Syracuse, I think is a really good ball player. I think that was a big pickup for this team, kind of like with Tanner McAllister transferring in a year ago from Oklahoma State. But then you got Sonny Styles ready to step up, a guy who, you helped recruit his father, in some form or fashion when he showed up at Ohio State. His father extremely well. But Sonny Styles, shouldn't be confused with his father, who was a big-time linebacker, Lorenzo. I think he was underrated, man. I really like watching him play. But
I love watching him.
Yeah. But Sonny Styles and Kai Stokes, a guy who really flashed last year, especially in the spring, but you saw very little of it. And you got Josh Proctor deciding to come back for a 6th year, because obviously he could use that one more year. So there's a guy I would pencil in as a starter type. I think they've got the people to get it done, right? But you've got to get some confidence going in that room, don't you? That defensive backfield room.
Absolutely. You've got a lot of pieces that have been around, have seen some defensive, have seen other conferences and how they play, and have seen the speed of the game. So when you start looking at that, it's not a matter of do they have talent. It's, can you get the talent to play together? Can you get a cohesive unit to get back there that can communicate with each other, that is on one page and understands like, hey, you got to line up here. We've got to get here. We've got to do this, because they all have to play in concert in unison. And if you can't do that, then you have those breakdowns. Like, all you need, especially, in the secondary, is all you need is one breakdown in communication where I thought we were playing cover 3. I thought we were playing cover 2, and you let a guy run through the zone, which happened a few times that we watched during the season. And that's where the big plays happen. And so the first thing is you get everybody to understand the defense, like understand the signals, understand the checks. If they get in this formation, we're going to do this. If they get in there, we're going to do that. And then you can kind of go on that and figure out who has the aptitude. Are they in their career? Are they far long enough in their career that they can say, I can do a couple things. I can multitask. I can do this. I can make these checks, because you need a quarterback back there for the secondary to be able to call certain things, get everybody lined up, so that and you have to be able to do it in the heat of the battle.
Yeah.
You know, it's really easy to do it in practice, not so easy to do in the heat of the battle when you're lining up against a guy, you know, and you're facing Georgia and they're going no huddle. And you're like, okay, I've got to get in here now and we've got to check. Because if you miss that check, you leave your safety on an island against the fastest man on the football field. And everybody's like, we know where the ball's going. And he's playing 10 yards off and he still got ran by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said too, I mean, you know, after that Michigan game, we had the same conversation. I don't know if you remember, but after that Michigan game, you got to know where your help is and where your help isn't. You know, you can't let a guy run cut a, you know, basically what I call a flag post on you when you know you have no help on the inside, you know, in the middle of the field. I mean, which is what Michigan did with a guy. They ran scissors at Ohio State, two defenders, and they ran into each other, and the guy broke open down the right sideline. You saw a guy slip down and a guy run by him. You saw a guy miss a tackle and a guy run by him. And it's almost like I'm talking about the same game when I'm talking about the Georgia game. I mean, you saw, you know, just mistakes made, just physical mistakes made, along with maybe mental mistakes made. And and, you know, like you listed off all the big plays they gave up. It seems like the lion's share, maybe 3/4 of all those plays came against Michigan and Georgia more than anything else in the biggest games of the year. Who cares? You know, I'm not going to name names about teams you play earlier.
I got you.
But the teams you got to match up with, and you can't have those big time. You can have a few mistakes because the other team is trying to make you have mistakes, but you can't have that many of them, right? And but because this is what decides whether you're a champion or not. And so let me ask you this. Did you see guys, from your vantage point, did you see guys put in uncomfortable positions from what you could tell? Like you were talking about a while ago, you know, the other team is scheming too. They're trying to get your worst cover guy on their best receiver or their fastest guy. You know what I mean? Like Georgia did. Kid coming out of the slot, the fastest guy on the field, or at least on the field for that play, and he runs right by a safety. I don't know. Did you see just guys put in some uncomfortable positions?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when you watch some of those plays, sometimes guys were put in uncomfortable positions just because it's a new scheme. They're not used to doing what the defense and the defensive coordinator and the coaches really want them to do. So there's a learning curve there. Like, how do I play this position the way my coaches want me to play it? Because in the past, I played it this way. I'm really good at this, or I'm used to playing this. So it takes a little learning curve in a while to get that. And then just I watch guys get put in uncomfortable positions by alignment. Like, you know, I mentioned earlier how they try to disguise a lot of things, and you're trying to like have a safety show cover 2, but we're really running cover 3, and you're trying to run back from 10 yards to get back to a deep third, but there's nobody jamming the receiver to kind of slow him down. So now it's a foot race of, can I get back fast enough? And then you're trying to cover everything. So this is where communication comes in of, hey, listen, your job is the middle third of the field. You got to get back to the middle of the field. I don't care if he runs a 7 cut, because he's running to the other third where the corner is going to be at, where the corner has to make sure he sinks back and help cover up that route. If you try to take the 7 cut, and you hit your head whip and turn wrong, and he comes back on the post, you're dead in the water, because that's your zone. Your zone is to take the middle of the field. And that happened against Michigan, where he gave up a huge play because he took the 7 cut thinking that's what he's running. And then he ran back on the post. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, shoot, I'm beat. I'm dead in the water. Yeah. So you have some of those things. And then you just kind of look at it like, but then scheme also comes into play, right? So we know that we like to play a lot of safeties in our scheme. We don't like to match up. We don't like to sometimes always play dime and bring in another cornerback to say, I'm a matchup, corner for corner, a guy that can run foot speed for foot speed with this guy. We like to keep our safeties and show that this base covers what we run. And they like to keep their linebackers in, which by alignment means they like to have a safety down, because if you bring a corner, teams will run on you. And most corners aren't going to be as physical as you put a safety in. You might call it a jack position, whatever you want to call it, right? So you're going to have pretty much 3 safeties on the field. And when you have that safety has to be able to cover. Because what I would do if I'm an offensive coordinator, what a lot of teams that like to pass is okay, linebacker's here. He's going to go get the running back if I keep my running back or tight end and flex him out. Well, I've got 4 of the receivers over here that you got to match up with. Somebody's getting matched up on my athlete. And if I'm smart, what I do is I'll put him in motion. I'll put my best athlete in a slot position and say, okay, match up. If you want to say, okay, this safety's going to go out on an edge, oh, great. I want that, which is what Georgia did.
Yeah.
And said, I'm going to put my fastest guy on edge, and your safety's going to cover him. He's dead in the water. It doesn't matter what you run. He's not going to be able to cover him because that's not his normal alignment. And you also tip that I'm in man-to-man. When you do that, okay, corner walked outside. I already gave up the fact that I'm playing man-to-man because I walked outside on him. It's not a corner. So I know it's not zone any longer. And so now just by looking at all those things, you got to say, okay, if I'm already got to show that I'm not in zone and I'm playing man-to-man, then as a free safety, if I don't have to cover somebody, who's the most dangerous threat? Where do I need to get over top of? And those are some of the breakdowns that you saw throughout the course of the season. Were just like, it just looked like guys weren't really sure. They weren't always on the same page. You know, you look at, hey, I'm doing this. I'm looking backwards, talking to the safety, the ball snap, and you're out of position. So you rush to try to make a tackle and saying, okay, well, you know what? They've got the first down. I whiff on a tackle. They get a 60-yard touchdown run.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. So things like that, those plays you can correct. Like, hey, here's how you handle that. It's just, can you help guys really understand how teams want to attack you and then help them line up the proper way that they don't give up those big plays?
Yeah, that's what Jim Knowles, I read a little story this week on basically how do you go about, fixing this, meaning fix it's not the right term maybe. How do you go about oiling and greasing it? You know what I mean? Because obviously the scheme has got a lot of upside.
Yes.
But it's kind of like what you just pointed out. He goes, last year, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's not exactly what he said, but last year was more about meet and greet, getting to know everybody, getting to know what guys can do, getting to know 3 new coaches you're working with, 2 in the secondary, or right on down the line, everybody getting on the same page, so to speak. This year is more about, honing, which means not taking, not listening to too many excuses. You know what I mean? It's like letting people know what their responsibilities are, what their techniques are that need to be changed or used better, et cetera. Basically, having a competition to where if repeatedly you can't get it done, we got somebody else who maybe you can. You know what I mean? Just being a firmer coach and taking no excuses for answers. And we'll see what that goes. But is there anything in this scheme you would change? I mean, in my opinion, and I even asked him this point blank. I said, one thing that bothered me was, a team that has 3 safeties on the field, and you touched on this a minute ago. Golly, man, it's just tough to look out there sometimes and not see a safety, deep. I'm talking about the safety to me is the last guy that keeps you from crossing the river, to make your attack. I mean, there's one thing about giving up a big play that goes for 60. There's a totally different thing about giving up a big play that goes for 60 and a touchdown. And that's what really killed him. I was giving up gash plays that went for touchdowns. And I don't know. It seems simple to go, just leave a safety deep all the time. And he said, well, they did that. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't work. I mean, even though the safety was supposed to be deep, like you talking about, there were some indecision there or some mistakes made. But I don't know, if you could change one thing about this scheme, what would it be?
Oh, that's a lot. It's hard to say what one thing I would change. I would say I would start with, on those obvious passing situations, instead of always leaving 3 safeties on the field, if you have a corner that can really come in and match up, where you can get that corner to match up on the 3 best receivers. If you have that in your depth chart and you have somebody that can come in and do that, maybe bring them in. So even if it's, hey, 3rd and 8, I'm going to this type of scheme and I'm going to bring this guy in. We're going to go 2 safeties and the other safety is going to have to match up and I keep one free. I would start there because I think that's easier. We would call it dime. You might call it nickel, depending on who you take out to bring in that guy. If you're leaving linebackers in, I mean, if you want the 2 safeties in, then maybe take one of your linebackers out and put your safety down in the box and bring another corner in. So you can kind of get away with that to say, okay, I've got somebody that can match up with a pretty fast tight end or a pretty good running back. Because sometimes they left their linebackers on island sometimes and said, okay, hey, not necessarily the safety blew it, but hey, I'm going to get this first down and I'm going to keep this drive alive because you're putting Eigenberg or Chambers on me, and I know I can beat them if I get the right matchup, right? So understanding like certain down and distances maybe change it up a little bit. But really for me, I think it's the communication with the two safeties at the back end. Like, listen, if you're going to be deep, get deep and understand where this route's going to be. And then also understanding who you're playing against. Like, I think for me, I think of when I was at Ohio State as a player, because I went through some of those same growing pains of really understanding what the defense was, what we were trying to do, how teams would attack us. And it wasn't until I got to the next level where the coach sat me down and said, listen, everybody's athletic here. Everybody can play. Everybody can run at this level. Yeah. So it's not about being athletic. That don't rely on just your athleticism. Understand the angles you need to take. Understand where they're going to go with the ball. Understand. I had a coach who was like, he drilled in my head, listen, if it's a go ball, don't take a flat angle. That ball is going to go at 42 yards. He's going to drop back 5 yards. His back foot's going to hit the ground. He's going to let that ball go. And he's like, he looked at every film and he's like, it's going to average about 42 yards. So as a safety, understand if it's going to be 42 yards, I need to be here at my angle, not there at my angle. And if you understand some of those things, when you play on defense, you make more plays. And so once I started understanding those things, like, oh, okay, those things I didn't understand that part. Like, I can be in a better body position. I can be this, like, let my natural body position of where I am take away certain routes so that I don't have to cover every route on the route tree. When you try to do, like, if I'm trying to do everything else as a corner, had to learn that too. Hey, look, if I'm playing outside shade, I take away the out. I take away the 7 cut just by my natural body position if I'm playing outside covered. So only thing that's going to hurt me is a 4 cut, a post, and understand where my help is, running to my help. But don't jump to cover every route because you can't cover every route. Let the defense play the way it's supposed to. And you would see certain guys like, I got to cover everything or I'm out of position. If they could just understand the body position and the defense, they would be a lot better in the long run.
Do these guys need in your opinion, a confidence class? Meaning, from what you saw, because like I've told you, no matter what defense you deploy in, it almost comes down to a man-to-man battle. I mean, at the end. Yeah. And when the ball is in the air, and you saw Ohio State guys rarely, in my opinion, I'm talking about against better competition, rarely win the 50-50 battle. You know what I mean? And where do you get confidence in that realm? I mean, they tell us all the time that iron sharpens iron. Ohio State has they love saying that. And then you're going against Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. Well, Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming are sitting out the spring, but they've got just a roster replete with great receivers. They did have last year, talked about sharpening iron, but it didn't seem like that iron sharpened them like it should have. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the defenders. So where do you go about getting their confidence back? Like a Denzel Burke, for example, not picking on him. He did not have the greatest of sophomore seasons, broke a bone in his hand, got hurt in preseason camp, then broke a bone in his hand and things like that. But where do you go about, for example, we're not picking on him, so to speak, as they say in offensive football, but where do you go about getting like a fellow like that, getting his confidence back?
I think it starts now. I mean, I think you help him get back into the technique, because when it comes down to this level, it's all about technique, right? So when your technique is a little off or you feel like you can't do certain things, you have to go back to the film. Okay, take me to a point where you felt really comfortable. Take me to a point in time your freshman year when you felt like you were doing X, Y, and Z. Why is that? What changed this year as opposed to last year? Let me show you some game tape and let me walk you through look at your foot placement here. Look at your hand placement when you did this. Now let's get back to this year. Look at your hand placement here. Look at your foot placement here. Look at those things. Like, this is where you can say, oh, okay, so you help the player figure it out on their own. And then you can kind of walk through like, okay, so now as a defensive coordinator and a defense, especially when it even goes down to Tim Walton as a defensive, as a position coach, like, okay, so let's look at when you're playing, really when you played at a high level, you felt yourself. And when you felt like it was just a little off, let's compare the two. Okay. For you, and again, I was running a lot of corners and it helped me to get to the next level. I had a really good teacher in Dick Roach, and he was really big on technique. Because at that level, I would tell Denzel Burke, you can run with anybody in the nation. So let's not think that athletically you can't compete. Yeah. It's all about technique. Can you recognize what they're going to try to do to you from the snap? And if you play press, they're going to attack you this way. If you play off, they're going to attack you this way. Now, can you go and match up against them, I think you can. So we start with that. You give them the 100% vote of confidence, and then you're just kind of like walking through like, hey, do this. We're going to be here. If I'm playing outside coverage, here's how I want you to play this outside coverage. Take away half the body. And I learned that by take away half the man. And so it sounds crazy because as a corner, like I got to cover this, right? But really, if I'm playing outside shade and I'm saying the inside is yours because this is where all my help's going to be, then by natural position, I only have to cover this half of you. So if I'm looking at your screen from the middle of your nose here and over, by body position, I take that away naturally. So all my steps, all my hand placement, everything is to design to keep that position. I'm going to take that away by body position. The moment the receiver try to stem inside and get back out, in my head, red light should go off like, uh-oh, wait a minute. He's trying to get to the outside position of where I am. He must want to run a route here. He must be trying to run a comeback. He must be trying to run it out. So by body position, let me keep this position. It's a shuffle, slide, hand jab here. You do a couple of things to hold that body position so that you have the best chance to cover that man, because that's the weakness in the defense is if you let him outside, that's the weakness. If I funnel him inside, I've got a linebacker there. I've got a safety sitting there. That's where I want him to go. And so you just start working those things, and it's a little bit of things. You run drills to practice that. You go over a lot of film. You walk through, you talk through a lot of it. You watch a lot of film individually with your secondary, your other corners, like, hey, when he does this, when he wants to go outside, he lines up like this. His right foot does this. He does this. He shakes. He does all these things that you have to watch to be in tune with. And if you can do that and study enough, I know just a 20-hour rule in college and all those things, but if you can do those things and figure that out, then you give yourself the best chance to win.
Wait, is it 20 hours and you get 20 hours to work on your NIL deals? I mean, how does that work now? What do you think?
They say 20-something hours, but I mean, you're going to do what you need to do to make sure you
play. Yeah. If you want to go to the next level, which all these guys do, I mean, you got to do your homework, right? Absolutely. I mean, and that's not, it's big time. This is big time football, man. Yep. Let me ask you one last thing before we move on, because I want to ask you about another thing. You got Georgia down. You've shut them out in the third quarter. You got to feel like you're doing really good work out there, right, defensively. And then, man, when they just launched all the alert fighters and just said, all right, we're coming after you. And like I said a while ago about getting your confidence back, that was good on good. That was about as good on good can be in major college football. I'm talking about your challenge and stuff. What is it that you think they got specifically from that fourth quarter that they definitely can lean on? Is it no matter what, you can't give up the big – I mean, what that's kind of what we're talking about all along, but what is it you can learn from biting that apple, if you follow my drift? I mean, that of being sort of like embarrassed defensively on the biggest stage of all. You know what I mean? I mean, is it hard to come back from that, I guess, is what I'm asking.
It's not hard to come back from that. I think you have to take it as a learning experience, right? Again, you were really people are going to say you're a field goal away. To me, I think there were a lot of other plays that were left on the field that would have made it so you didn't have to come down to kicking a field goal, a 50-yard field goal at that. But, when you look at a defense, okay, what do we do well? Like we held them here. We had a 14-point lead. We got pressure. We did some really good things against them. But then you look at it as, okay, we gave up 18 points in the fourth. We can't do that against really good football teams. And so you look at it, it's okay, if you break down the film, what was it? So you look at the one play. Okay, listen, we had a safety on their fastest athlete, and he ran by him like he was standing still. He took off, he took 3 steps, and he fell immediately. Okay, we can't give that up. So what was some of the signs? Like who's
– Let me ask you a question right there. Let me ask you a question right there, though. But you're also – it's not just the secondary. You're also gambling up front to a certain extent. I mean, if you do that, it's got to hit, right? I mean, it's got to hit. I mean, that's easy to say because the other team practices too and stuff, but this wasn't just all on the secondary. Yet when it came down to being all on the secondary guys couldn't make the play. You know what I mean? I mean, so, but there's a lot that has to happen before it gets down to a 50-50 ball. This guy versus your guy on an out route or on a go route, right? I mean, right. I mean, it's not casting all the blame, but by golly, sometimes it does come down to man making a play. But that's part and parcel, right? You go back and study could we have gotten better pressure should we have been gambling in this situation, right? I mean, should we?
Right. And you're going to look at all those things and say,
Yeah.
okay, should we have blitzed on second down as opposed to letting it get here? Should we have brought more pressure on first down? But I think it also goes to alignment, right? Like you talked about, you needed to rush to get there. So even if they had a blitz on that,
yeah,
you have to look and say, okay, this is the matchup I don't want, because if he falls, which he did on that play, and we single it out, the rush never has a chance to get there because it's bang, bang. Oh, he's open. The ball's there. It's out. You want him to hold it. So even if I tell my safety, listen, man, get back to 15 yards, I'd rather him catch a 10-yard, a 12-yard hitch as opposed to run. Like, again, now, like thinking like, okay, listen, I would have rather him, look, if he catches the ball 20 yards, you make a tackle, okay, we line up and we live and play another day.
Yeah.
And fall down at 12 yards and he runs by you, there's no one else to help you over the top. So those are get magnified, but then it also doesn't help your rush. It doesn't help the blitzing linebacker. It doesn't help the stunt that they're running up front, because if you had just made him hold it for maybe one more second, the rush might get there.
Right.
And so those are things when you say as a corner or a safety on the back end, how do I help the up front guys? Like, again, it's in concert. Like, I played in the league with Bruce Smith and Bryce Pop. So we knew coming out, this ball is coming out fast. Like, look, they've got 3.5 seconds or else they might be on the ground. So when you understand the rush can get there, you can play with a little bit more confidence. You know, if I just take this route away, they're going to go this, but I can't give this route up because I need to give them a chance to get there. And so that's where we talk about understanding the defense, understanding the weaknesses of the defense, not just how teams are going to attack you, but the weakness of your own defense of, okay, if I know a go route is the weakness in this defense, try not to get beat deep. It's easier said than done sometimes, but those are things that you think about, like, hey, because I want to give my guys, my front seven up front, the best chance to be successful. And as a back end, I have to work in concert to help them be successful as well.
Yeah, don't get beat deep. But if you do get beat deep, don't get beat deep 3 or 4 times. You know what I mean? I mean,
right.
anybody can live with an occasional wow, but 3 wows, that's wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, but Georgia did some really good things scheme-wise, taking advantage of what we do, right? And that's where guys will get a little bit smarter, and I think sometimes you'd have to go with the growing pains of the scheme. Like, you can't call everything you want to play because the back end, they can't play the way you really want to play as a play caller yet. The coaches don't necessarily understand the full extent of the scheme of how you want to do it yet. And so you're kind of like, all right, I can't do what I would normally run coming from Oklahoma State. Like, we did this because I had this safety and I had this type of corner. So when you finally get all your pieces, then you can play the real way you really want to play.
Yeah.
But right now you're bringing those guys along. So you saw the growing pains. You saw them do some really good things in the game. You saw them do some not so good things in the game. But I think as they get a little older, get more experience, they will play a lot better, and they'll play a lot better this year too.
All right, one more quickie before I ask you. Well, I also want to ask you about who we mentioned Denzel Burke. Is there another player that intrigues you? I mean, Sonny Styles has a chance to step up. Cam Martinez is a guy that got his feet wet and also got burned. You know, that's what you go through. I watched you get burned, man. No offense.
Yeah, I gave us some plays because I didn't understand the defense. Didn't understand the defense and didn't understand body position, right?
Yeah.
When you try to say I can run a 4-4 and he can run a 4-4, okay, but my 4-4 at a bad angle, puts me in a bad position.
Or a split second late on the start as opposed to him. Yeah.
Yep.
No matter how you get separation. Is there a player or two that intrigue you? Like this kid coming over from Syracuse, Jihad Carter, he's got a lot of games under his belt. The Igbinosin kid, I'm talking about the transfers, a kid from Ole Miss, started 10 games, seemed to kind of lose his confidence himself there late in the year and kind of got replaced. But was a freshman, you know what I mean? That experience, you can't buy it, man. You got to live it, right? And
right.
But is there somebody that intrigues you that may be on the way up here in this group?
Honestly, the one person, because I saw a little bit of Syracuse play, so I know he can play. But Sonny Styles is a guy that really is intriguing to me because he made some really good plays and some spot play that he did. And knowing how we like to play a scheme of 3 safeties, you look at who they're bringing over, who they have.
Yeah.
If you're not going to bring a corner in to match up, Sonny Styles does have the foot speed that it showed that he has the foot speed that he can run with guys. And so if he can come in and be that hybrid safety / cover, third cover corner that can match up with some of the third wide receivers in the league that you're going to face, then it gives you the flexibility that you're looking for in your defense, because now you're like, okay, I know I can put Styles over here and he can come in and he can run with this guy and he's going to be physical and he's going to make some plays. And if you can get that style, that's how this defense has been in the past have been really successful. Of you get a guy that can come on a run, but you can get a guy that can go out and match up and cover. And if you can find Styles as that guy, oof, the defense can be really scary. That can be really scary. So that's the guy I'm looking to see who takes a stride. I think Denzel Burke rebounds and plays well, because you just gotta play enough, and you're gonna have, as I've always learned, like, success is not linear, right? You're gonna have good games, bad games, up and down games, good seasons, bad seasons. It's just, can you string enough good plays along the way to say I had a really good career, a really solid career at Ohio State? And I think Burke rebounds, but Sonny Styles is he's my asterisk guy. Like, if this guy gets it, he will make that defense and make that defense dynamic.
Dude, he looks like a football player. I mean, he handles himself like a big time kind of guy, potential big time kind of guy. And there's no doubt about it. I'm not trying to get brownie points with his dad, Lorenzo, who I really liked when he was at Ohio State. I mean, I really think there are some guys that could really, once they get that confidence going, once they get the confidence, the coaches to, like, I mean, because it looked like they were reticent to really go, even though they went with him in that game against Georgia a little bit early and stuff. It looked like we were reticent to maybe go that route, at the end, because you're just, man, we got to have the guys we really know what's going on out there, and they still got burned. But that's not. Hey, I want to ask you this before you go, Marlon. Marlon, the snow thrower Kerner. You were, and I call you a roster player because anything other than a quarterback is what I'm referring to here. Is how much did you guys, like in '93, there was a quarterback battle. It was Bobby Hoying was his year to step up, but they also brought in Brett Powers, the transfer from Arizona State. They ended up both playing, Bobby starting and Brett Powers coming in. But before that, you were there as a freshman in '91 when Kent Graham beat out Kirk Herbstreit. And then Kirk Herbstreit won the battle. I'm not sure who he was even going against in '92. But my point is, and in the NFL, I'm trying to think, did you have the same quarterback the whole time? I'm trying to think.
Jim Kelly, and then Todd Collins.
Yeah, Todd Collins. Yeah,
and then Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. But my point is, how much do you guys on the roster pay attention to the quarterback battle that's going on your team? Because you're smart enough to know this now, especially looking back. The quarterback isn't the most important player on the field; it's the quarterback. Meaning he determines what you're really going to be remembered as a team. Well, for the most part, right? But how much do y'all pay attention to that? How much do y'all root for somebody, or do you just let it happen? I know you have to let it happen because the coaches make you, but give me some insight on that.
Honestly, having seen it and gone through it, I think in college, you have to let it happen because that's how it's going to be. I think what ends up happening is because you're kind of like this really big family, you guys compete with each other. It's not just like we're competing in practice. It's all the things that go into it. We're in the weight room getting to know each other and bonding with each other. You're running and doing all the summer workouts and watching all the work that the guys put in it. So for me, I knew going in, like, hey, look, I'm going to trust you as a coaching staff to figure out who's going to give us the best bet to kind of be successful. I think the only thing that I would say that I've watched is it's hard on both quarterbacks because you like both of them, because especially when it's like, both of them are giving them their all. They're in the weight room the way they're supposed to. They're in the film room studying. They're doing everything. But for some reason, coaches decide to go with a two-style quarterback, and you got the series, you got the series. It makes it difficult to figure out who to kind of get a feel for the game, because watching players go through that, you're just kind of like, man, it's hard. It's not the same as a corner who might be like, hey, I'm coming on a third down and I'm coming in on a special package because I know what I'm going to do. It's just, so you have to be prepared when you're a quarterback on that. But on the defensive side, we just kind of go back and say, okay, listen, we just want whoever gives us the best chance to win. And so as long as we don't let them score more points than us, then we're good. And that's kind of the approach we always took as a defense. Like, look, just don't let them score more points in our offense and we're okay. And then it doesn't matter. Then you don't get into well, you should have played Hoying, or you should have played Powers, or you should have done this. It's when the game comes on the line, you're like, oh, I've got a shootout. Well, who do you trust in that shootout? Like, that's where it becomes different. Now, and also grew up in a time when we didn't have social media and all those things as well. So you didn't have all the comments flying back and forth and guys being able to do instant interviews and say all these things. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to say how it is now compared to how it was back then. But I would definitely say, like guys just kind of on the defensive side, we just kind of say, let it play how it plays. And then if you see that a guy can't, then that's when the captains and the leaders of the team have to step to the coach. Like, listen, we like this guy, but we think this guy gives us the best chance to win. And so if you don't want to lose the morale of the team, that's when your leaders have to step up and say, coach, we want to talk to you. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you, here's what I'm hearing on the team.
Yeah.
And you might need to kind of pay it. Here's what I need to convey this to you. And then you need to kind of make a decision based off all the information on who should be the one who should be playing the most.
Was it a welcome ear when if that happens, did you find it's a welcome ear from the coaches, or do they say, stay in your lane?
I think it depends on the coach, right? Some coaches want to hear like, hey, I appreciate you bringing it to me. It's do you and this is what the coaches are doing now when you talked about trying to figure guys out. How do I communicate to guys to help them understand what I really want them to do and want them to play? It's the same way when you go and give feedback to a coach. How do I give that information to a coach where he doesn't take it, where he's like, oh, I'm going to put up a wall and become defensive? It's, hey, coach, as a captain, as a leader on the team, here's what I'm hearing among some of the guys. And I just want to bring your attention and let you know so that you're going to be armed with the decision as you make your roster out of who should be where. I just want to let you know, here's what I'm hearing, here's what I'm seeing. You can take it with a grain of salt, however you see it. But as a leader on this team, I have to tell you this. And so once you kind of get that relationship, then you're okay. But hey, if you say it the wrong way, of course, every coach is gonna be like, well, you trying to tell me how to do my job? like I'm getting paid to do this job. Let me do my job. You go do yours as a player.
Did you ever do that? Did you ever do that?
No, I didn't have to necessarily have to say that.
Did you ever send somebody else in to do it?
No, I think for me, again, I've had so many things.
Get Jim Kelly out of there.
Nope. So many great. I think at Ohio State, I said, I'm open for a change. I think I was having a slump where I wasn't playing well, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, listen, coach, you do what you got to do. Like, if that means I'm not playing, then don't play me. Like, if you feel like I don't give you the best chance to win, then don't play me. I'm okay with that. Like, and so, but you have to be okay and comfortable enough to tell it to the coaches, like, don't feel bad. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I will figure it out. Luckily, it didn't come down to that, but we made some different changes. I kind of finally figured out what I needed to do on defense and ended up playing better toward the middle and the last part of the season. But, you have those conversations with coaches like, well, what's going on? How can I help you? And then you start watching film like, coach, I'm feeling off about this. Well, let's go look at the game film. That's the first thing we always go do as players and coaches. So let's go look at the film. When do you feel you play well? Okay, I played well when I did this. Oh, okay, well, my feet are off. Like, simple things as far as adjusting your alignment. Like, funny thing is I would tell guys, I can watch guys that play press man and say, okay, listen, your feet is too wide. What do you mean? So we all have a tendency that when you play press man to kind of jump just a little bit, you always flinch when they move. But most people jump a little bit and they get their feet wide. Well, if you have your feet too wide, the moment you flinch and you step out, you can't plant and go left or right, right? So it's simple as just telling guys like, hey, listen, bring your base in a little bit. You're a hopper at the line of scrimmage. You got to be more physical with your left hand because you let guys run through it. Put that left foot down. Like if you can talk to some of those things and help guys figure it out, it helps them be a little bit stronger at the point of contact. But I always start with your feet. If you're going to play press man, feet, get your feet closer. Because when he hops, when he moves and you hop, you still have your base underneath you can move. If you get too wide, I've seen guys kind of get stuck in sand. It's like getting stuck in quicksand. You just watch the guy do the Olay and turn, and you're like, he's beat off line of scrimmage. And so simple things like that, when you start looking at film like, oh, I played differently. Oh, my base was a little bit better. It's a little tighter, a little narrower. I need to adjust that. Oh, I did this when I jammed. I hit my hand, and I took a half a step back to give myself a little bit of distance so that he can't close up on me and then make me turn my hips. So if you notice you do those things, these are all the little techniques that you look at, like do this, do that, do this, do that to make you better. And once I realized that by watching film, you're like, oh, I have a bad technique here. This is where technique is really important at all times, especially playing corner, playing off and press man.
Yeah, that foot game, man. That's why I call it football. That foot game is like if all of a sudden you're spread wide and you've got and the guy goes this way instead of that way, and you have to take literally a step and a half to recover and get into your, whereas if you can take a 3/4 step, if your feet are closer together, you can take a 3/4 step and be into it. It's like that's just basic stuff. But in the heat of the moment, that's why you got to work on that, right? Work on that. As the Nick Saban said, who's quoting probably somebody else, you don't work on it till you get it right. You work on it till you can't get it wrong, right? And
Absolutely.
And that's just, and the thing about it is we saw some young defensive backs grow last year,
Yes.
and grow the hard way. I mean, and boy, once you give up a 60-yard touchdown pass or a 70-yard touchdown pass, there's no going back. I mean, you may wish there had been a flag, but there wasn't. I mean, you've got to clearly grow from that moment as fast as you can, right? And as the old saying goes, you have a short memory, but that short memory only goes so far, right?
Right. Especially when you give up 5.
I'm telling you,
plays.
Everybody else has got to remember Ohio State getting beat by Georgia. I mean, all the fans are going to remember it, and you're going to remember it too 20 years later. You know what I mean? When you had a shot to go to the national championship game and it didn't happen, and maybe it was because of final analysis. Yeah, there's a lot of plays that add up to those decisive plays, but the decisive plays are called that because they do decide it, and you have a chance there to be the hero or the GOAT, and it's like, boy, I'm telling you, Marlon, before we go, cornerbacks, I don't know why anybody want to play cornerback. I know in my opinion, there are chances for glory, but there are so many more chances to just be, a guy catches a 12-yard out on 3rd and 11, a guy catches a 12-yard out and you're almost on him, you know what I mean? And he gets out of bounds and stops the clock. I mean, there's all these little things that just, wow, you're if the other team is playing right, you're always going to be a half step behind if they're playing correctly, right?
Yeah, but that's where coaches understanding the scheme, understanding tendencies. Like once I kind of figured out, okay, 3rd down, because every team has their go-to plays. Like 3rd down, 4th down. If I've got to go get this 1st down, this is what I'm running. And if you understand that and you know that and you recognize, but formation, this is the play. We practice, we talk through it. You got to give yourself a chance. And so that means studying the game plan, studying game film, watching things over and over, going over 3rd and 1 runs, 3rd and 2 runs. This is what they do on 3rd and 3. This is what they do on 3rd and 5. Here's all their pass plays here. 3rd and 8 plus they run this, and they like to get in this, like, because every offense of coach has his tendencies and his favorite plays and his favorite formations. And so that's the learning curve and the evolution of this young secondary now, is because you couldn't give them all of that. Like you couldn't say, here's all this, and do this, and don't get beat here and don't do that. Like you have to spoon feed it to them. And so now that they've got some experience, okay, I've got it. I understand this. I understand the calls. Okay, I know if you call this, we should do X, Y, and Z. Now I can really drill into you like, okay, we call this because we're expecting them to do this now. And so when you recognize it by formation, okay, he clears your face. Like I talk about Dick Roach a lot because he really helped me become a better player. But he used to always tell me, 3rd and 8 or longer, if somebody crosses your face quickly, don't jump it, right? And we saw a lot of underneath guys do that, and Georgia, and then during the games earlier, because if you jump the first guy, the shallow crosser first, you leave a big window behind you, right? So he would always say, hey, what's the down and distance? Okay, 3rd and 8, don't take the crosser, pass him off, let it go to the next man, take 2 yards to wherever he was going. If he's coming across your face 2 yards over and drops straight back, you'll get right in the passing lane. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't understand that. And then I did it in practice. He was like, see what I told you, young man? And I'm like, oh, and there's like a light bulb moment. Like, oh, okay. That's how teams get you, because they want the window behind you. So you just have to understand. Now, if it's 3rd and 3 and he crosses your face, you got to take him because that's probably your zone. But if not, if it's 3rd and longer, hold that zone, hold that window, allow your corner to come underneath or your safety to jump on that, and then go make the break. Because I'd rather take the 3rd and 5 and tackle that for short, because I'm going to have help. I'm going to have a corner breaking and I'm coming inside out and we're going to kind of do that tackle together. Or do I jump that and vacate the area and give up an easy 1st down? And once you have your underneath secondary, your linebackers all working in unison and in tandem like that, now you have a really special unit. And those are things that they can really drill into in spring. Like you're just like, here's the routes we're going to see. Here's what we saw in Georgia. Here's how we should play it, because it's a copycat league. They're going to run the same routes they saw in the game against Georgia for opening season. Hey, Georgia did this against you and they had success. We're going to do the same thing. So get used to it now, because you're going to see it a lot. And if you can stop it early, then you're going to be really good, because you're only going to get better as the season goes along.
Yeah, I was going to say, and as a defensive coordinator, Jim knows he is really intelligent. I mean, super intelligent. And it's like, but like you just said, you can't call, and you know, it takes a while for that intelligence to feed down, to trickle down, like you're talking about, because you have the perfect call in your mind for this coming situation. But does my cornerback or does my third safety on the field, are they immersed in it so much that I can make this call and feel confident they're going to react the way they should react, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
Yep.
it's always about osmosis, about it trickling down and having that confidence that, yes, this guy's started 14 games. He knows what's going to happen if they do A, B, or C. I mean, and
Yep.
I mean, we can sit here and talk about that for 4 hours, because you always know what you wanted to call, but what can your guys do, right? I mean, that's
Right.
the trick. Anyway.
Always a trick. Yes. Yes. I know
Anyway.
we can talk about this all day, and I would love it, but I expect to see them take another jump. I mean, the defense statistically got a lot better than they were last year or the previous year. So I expect them to still continue to take that jump and that evolution. And you've got some young guys, that's back there that's playing that got a lot of experience, which will only help the new young guys coming in even get better. But it's going to be fun to watch that secondary play in unison with the linebackers, because having Eichenberg come back, that was huge. Because that was huge. I was like, if we lose him, who steps up? So with him coming back, that gives you a little bit more advantage, because he's seen some things. He can kind of be a little bit more aggressive, and more importantly, he can help some of those younger guys kind of figure it out, because now he has a better understanding as well.
Yeah, what a rare moment in college football for a guy to come back who probably would have been drafted pretty well and be moving on, and still Chambers right next to him is back. I mean, it's like, man, when you return your iron fist, you got something going on. So,
absolutely.
Anyway, well, ladies and gentlemen, this comes to the end. I'm not going to make Marlon Kerner play his trumpet, although he can. He was quite the trumpeter at one point, might still be. We won't get into that. We'll get into that the next time you're on, Marlon. But appreciate you joining the Tim May Show one more time, my man. I hope people enjoy just talking a little bit about this from the standpoint of, technique is so vital. I mean, it's so vital to how it always has been, the way the game of football is played. But now in this intricate era where exotic calls are sometimes part of the scheme, et cetera, you just got to have everybody on point, or boy, you look foolish, right?
Absolutely. Yes. One guy turned the wrong way the one time, and that's it. It's a 70-yard touchdown pass because I turned the wrong way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
my
where
defensive end was that close to getting there. That close. But no cigar. Ladies and gentlemen, Marlon Kerner, thank you for joining me. This is Tim May. And ladies and gentlemen, until next week for the Tim May Show, we'll see you then.